Hello everyone, this is R.S. Miller at the endtimenews.org and today is April 10th, 2014. This is a Ukraine Crisis Fast Track report. The U.S. to send more fighter jets to Poland amid tensions with Russia. The U.S. Air Force plans to deploy 18 fighter jets already based in Europe to Poland for joint maritime exercises at Lask Air Base in the Black Sea, U.S. officials say, amid continued tensions between the West and Russia over Ukraine. The official said Wednesday that F-16's from Germany's Standoff Air Base are also to participate in the training program at Lask Air Base, where F-16's from Italy's Aviano Air Base have already been deployed. Moreover, Britain's Royal Air Force, Mildenhall, will deploy 2 KC-135 refueling tankers to Powitz for the exercises, which are scheduled to take place in June. The warplanes were ordered to Poland at the request of the country following the escalation of tensions between the West and Russia over Ukraine. Additionally, the U.S. has sent the guided missile destroyers USS Donald Cook and the USS Truxton to the Black Sea. Both are designed to defend against ballistic missiles as well as other types of aerial threats. The increase of U.S. fighter jets and warships being sent to the region may be just the beginning. NATO commander says that U.S. troops may be deployed to Europe over the Ukraine crisis. The United States Air Force commander in charge of the NATO alliance's military presence in Europe said on Wednesday this week that U.S. troops may soon be deployed to the region as tensions continue to worsen near the border between Ukraine and Russia. In an interview with the Associated Press, U.S. Air Force General Philip Breedlove said that forthcoming plans intended to ensure stability in Europe for the NATO partners in the area could involve the mobilizing of American troops. Representatives from the 28 countries involved in the multinational organization have asked Breedlove, a 4-star general who has since last year served as the supreme allied commander of NATO's European operations, to have a plan ready by early next week to reassure partners in the region that other alliance countries have their back. Breedlove told the Newswire that he has every intention of unveiling his proposal ahead of next Tuesday's deadline, and that he wouldn't write off involvement by any nation, to include the United States. When asked by a reporter for clarification about the potential for U.S. military involvement, Breedlove reportedly reiterated, "I would not write off contributions from any nation." Meanwhile, the standoff between Kiev government and the pro-Russian protesters intensifies 24 hours before Kiev ultimatum ends. With 24 hours until Kiev's threatened deadline to use force against anti-government protesters occupying buildings in eastern Ukraine, reports emerge of tanks around the city of Donetsk. Several locals were allegedly injured trying to stop the convoy.
Kiev is deploying military vehicles to eastern Ukraine, with the interim government pledging to deal with protesters there in less than 48 hours. This footage was shot near Donetsk. It shows over a dozen armored vehicles moving through the countryside. Here you can see the locals are trying to stop them, without any success, though, as the trucks drive through the crowd. Donetsk is where the vehicles are believed to be heading, is among several cities in eastern Ukraine gripped by dissent against the post-coup government. Our team managed to speak to one eyewitness to find out what is going on there.
At about 2 p.m., we received information that military hardware had arrived at our local train station. We went there and saw APCs, military vehicles and troops. The whole town gathered nearby. The soldiers tried to start moving and the people tried to stop the vehicles. The soldiers twisted the arms of pensioners. There were 2 young men standing there and they drove right over their feet. I was pulled back by the local miners when I tried to stop the vehicles. They didn't even look at who was in front of them. The men started shouting for them to stop, saying there were girls and women in front of them, but they didn't care. We were later told they were the troops from Crimea that were disbanded and had joined the National Guard.
Meanwhile, in Donetsk, crowds outside the local military base have been besieging the buses with armed men inside who they fear are U.S. mercenaries. By now, all of the personnel have allegedly left the vehicles and have moved back onto the base. RT was able to speak with an eyewitness there. Let's take a listen.
I've seen a bus parked with armed men on the city's main streets. There were around 30 of them. They were wearing camouflage uniforms that I've never seen before, but they were definitely different from Ukraine's military uniform. From what I've heard, 3 such buses carried armed men to the regional military registration and enlistment office, and they were seen later on patrolling the territory.
Witnesses also reported armored vehicles moving towards the city of Lugansk. There, as well as in Donetsk, protesters are still occupying local administrative buildings. That is, as Kharkov has recently seen a violent crackdown on activists there that resulted in dozens of arrests. Squads of radical right-wing militants have also reportedly been heading to the east of Ukraine, but as RT's Maria Finoshina reports, the demonstrators are set to continue their fight despite all of the threats.
These barricades around the regional administration building in Donetsk appeared here on Tuesday. You can see people used tires, barbed wire, bags with sand, and actually so many other things to fortify the entrance of this building, fearing, as they say, the repetition of events in Kharkov. In the region's capital, police cleared all the governmental buildings taken earlier by similar groups of protesters in a very violent, brutal way, detaining around 70 participants of them, following what Interior Minister called later an anti-terror operation. And we heard earlier from the authorities in Kiev that all those responsible for the sieges of governmental buildings in major cities in eastern Ukraine, those who are considered by authorities in Kiev as separatists, will be severely punished. This is why it's clear people here, protesters, are worrying about their destiny. Well, we also hear from the members of Pravy sector, Ukraine's notorious neo-Nazi movement, that they are also on their way to the east of Ukraine. They say that they already liberated the city of Odessa and Mykolaiv, and now it is time for Donetsk and Lugansk. It is another eastern Ukrainian town where local security office building and the building of National Bank still remain occupied by protesters who do not recognize authorities in Kiev and say they will not obey their orders, and say they are waiting for a referendum to be held here to get more independence from Kiev. So far, the situation is peaceful, but no one can guarantee that it will stay this way, and no one can predict what may happen next. Maria Finoshina, RT, from Donetsk in eastern Ukraine.
Maria is at the scene right now and talking to protesters and also taking photos showing how the city center currently looks. You can find it all on her Twitter feed. Now, as protesters in the east brace for further crackdowns, some members of the Ukrainian parliament are proving that there is ample reason for their fear. Here is how one MP from the nationalist Svoboda party thinks the unrest should be dealt with.
I'm sorry, but I would have just shot them dead. Look, the enemy is operating in our land. What are we talking about? So today's response is absolutely warranted, but the measures should be much tougher. Our people have sacrificed their lives, so these creatures that are coming here deserve only one thing, which is death.
Some very strong...
Friends, are we about to experience a thermonuclear war with Russia over the Ukraine? Well, I can't say with absolute certainty. However, what I can say is that the potential for an all-out war with Russia over the Ukraine is a very real possibility. What appears to be taking place now, however, is the shifting of political alignments, the preparation for the Gog-Magog war of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Another aspect of the last days scenario is the sixth trumpet war of Revelation chapter 16. This war is scheduled to take place within our lifetime in the not too distant future. Starting in verse 12, Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its waters was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of demons, performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. In verse 15, Jesus Christ is speaking, "Behold, I am coming as a thief. Blessed is he who watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame." Continuing in verse 16, "And they gathered them together to a place in Hebrew called Armageddon." Now here's a little food for thought. One would never travel on a ship of any kind without a life jacket. And one would never jump out of an airplane without a parachute. So why would anyone go through life without Jesus Christ? He is our life jacket, and he is our parachute. Are you saved? Follow the link in the box below and pray the prayer of salvation with a sincere heart, and you will be saved. May God bless you and yours.